Welcome Northeast Conference fans to the latest NEC Now podcast on the NEC Overtime Pod. Today I am joined by Merrimack College ice hockey defenseman Zach Vinnell for a discussion on Indigenous culture.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we'll start with a pretty easy one. Why did you choose to attend Merrimack to continue your athletic and academic careers coming from Canada?
So the junior team I played for in Canada, Camrose, Alberta, they've had a lot of former players come and play at Merrimack. So that had a big part in it. And I just heard a lot of great things. And then when I came on my visit, just seemed like a good fit. It was kind of a rebuild year, bringing in a lot of freshmen for my class. But it just seemed like the coaches had great ideas in mind. So that's why I chose it here. And it's small and it's close to the city. So it's best of both worlds.
So you're a member of the First Nations in Alberta. Can you tell our listeners about what this means kind of generally, but also to you personally?
Yeah, so generally where I live, reservations is pretty known in Canadian culture. Indigenous people are really known, not necessarily for the right reasons, but just because of history and what's happened over the years. But in Alberta, specifically, a lot of cities, towns are surrounded by reservations, and I kind of fell into my culture later on in my life. I wasn't aware of the Indigenous background that I had until I was about 15 years old, and it wasn't until one of my teammates, Trigby Many Guns is his name, actually reached out and was like, "Hey, like, do you have any Indigenous background? Like, there's a lot of Indigenous hockey tournaments that go on throughout the summer and like national teams and whatnot." And I had known about my grandpa having Indigenous background, and so I looked into it, and I actually did. So I had got my Métis card, and then from there it's kind of just evolved, and I've grew into the culture and realized how great it is, and it really does mean a lot to me.
Yeah, so earlier in your answer, you kind of mentioned that the perception is not always the best, or there's some sort of just kind of misconceptions. What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, just the stereotypes that surround First Nations, Indigenous people isn't always the best, and outsiders don't know the true story behind, or don't know the true story and history of why these people are living on reserves and kind of are separated from the norm of society. So people stereotype these groups, and it's sad to see, but it's something that's still ongoing in Canada. And but once you're integrated into the culture and realize what it's really about, then that's when you start to realize how great it is.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big reasons we're trying to do these conversations and provide educational resources, because there is so much misinformation or just lack of education or colonization of current education. So again, I really appreciate you being on to talk about this. And so you mentioned that, you didn't really know a lot about your background until you were about 15.
Yeah.
Did your Indigenous identity play any sort of role in your upbringing? Maybe with your grandfather or really whatever?
No, it didn't, which is kind of sad, and I wish it did. I think my grandfather was ashamed in a way, because he was never brought up to appreciate his culture. And so once I found out about this, I mean, I was all for it, and I wanted to learn more and do my best to understand the culture and really not label anyone for what people may perceive them as to be. But yeah,
So you mentioned again earlier about competing in specific tournaments for Indigenous people. So I saw in 2015, you competed in the National Aboriginal Hockey Championships, which is a tournament open to Indigenous men and women under the age of 18. What was that experience like for you?
So that was my first experience with Indigenous hockey. So it was I just finished my midget AAA season in Canada, and I flew from that tournament that was in Quebec to Nova Scotia, where the tournament was held. And so there was like a little tryout for this team, and it's each province in Canada puts together a team of Indigenous hockey players, and then they compete on the national stage. And yeah, it was great. Went to that tournament, and we finished second. So we got a silver medal there. And I didn't realize how big of a deal like this tournament actually was until I was there, like opening ceremonies, closing ceremonies, like everything going on. So it's pretty special. And then after that, it's more just summer tournaments. And after like everyone's regular seasons are done, certain reservations bands, they put teams together, and then they compete in little tournaments across Canada. So those are pretty awesome because it's just an environment that is filled with Indigenous culture, and it's a way that these communities can get away from whatever's going on in their life, and they can all come together and just enjoy some hockey and watch high level hockey, because there's lots of great hockey players that play in these tournaments. Like I've played against Dwight King. I know Ethan Bear has been at these tournaments, guys like that. And I know Carey Price is pretty involved in the whole tournament aspect. So yeah, it's pretty great to be involved in these tournaments. It's a lot of fun, and they're highly competitive too, which people probably might not think, but yeah, there's usually a lot on the line for specific reservations and bands, and a lot of bragging rights. So
yeah, and I mean, you mentioned all those great players that compete at the tournaments, but I think you forgot to mention yourself. I mean, you left your junior team being the franchise's all-time leading scorer by a defenseman. That's really awesome. Just
Thank
figured I'd plug you.
Thanks for the plug. Appreciate it.
And like, did you find that the relationships, between your teammates or even the fans and the people in these tournament communities was different than, your regular hockey team, or, your junior team, or even now your college team?
I definitely say that I've played on, like, for these tournaments, I don't play on the same team all the time. So sometimes I'm playing with a lot of different players, and right away they accept you, and they don't hold back from integrating you into the group and like making you feel welcome. So that's one thing I've definitely noticed, and it's pretty special. And just the overall togetherness that each team, or like each tournament even provides, it's pretty great.
Yeah, it's awesome. That's really great to hear. And so, I mean, clearly you started playing hockey before you became more in touch with your Indigenous background, but similar to lacrosse, ice hockey has roots in games played by First Nations people in Canada. Now that you kind of know more about your own background and are obviously super involved in your sport, has this had any effect on the way you approach the game?
I definitely have looked at it where I want to give back more, especially just being around, like I've talked about, these tournaments. You see these people, they don't come from necessarily the best places, and the more you can give back, I feel like that's what I feel like I should be doing, especially not knowing so much about the culture early on in my life. And I feel like that's definitely one thing that I've taken away from it, is that I want to keep within the game of hockey, is being able to give back. I don't know necessarily how that could affect me like currently while I'm playing, but yeah, that's definitely one thing, just to give back to communities and be able to, help certain kids who may not have the opportunity to, or might not think they have the opportunity to make it far in hockey if that's what they dream, but give them that opportunity to feel like they can.
Just stepping, kind of back from hockey itself, how can we, like both your peers and advisors, be better allies to the Indigenous community, in your opinion? There's no right or wrong answer.
Just to be informed and not jump to conclusions. I mean, I feel like in the United States, especially, Native American culture isn't really something that's highlighted compared to other races and cultures, compared to Canada, where we really learn about in school the importance of what these groups of people have been through, and it's a part of our history, but we're here now learning about it to make change and move forward, where I feel like in the US, it's not really something that's necessarily like known, especially like talking with my peers, like it's just like I don't really know anyone that is really good friends or knows someone that is Indigenous. So if you can just inform yourself on their situations and why they are the way they are, and look into the history of it, because it's not their fault where they are right now. So if you could, take the time and just look into that and educate yourself and really realize why Native Americans are the way they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the difference between America and Canada in like doing a lot of research for this and trying to find resources for, NEC fans. Every time I search, like Indigenous history, anything like that, it's all Canadian resources. Like it's the amount I have to dig to find, any kind of firsthand accounts or actual educational resources that aren't super colonized. I have to look so hard, and especially to find anything before 1776, and just like in my own public school like education, K through 12. I just like I look back and like, wow, that's what they taught us, and that's just not right. And how we have to really actively kind of work to learn more and
Yeah.
do better. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. Like I noticed like even in history, like class, like compared to Canada here and there, like the only time like history in Canada, they like really highlight like what's gone wrong in the country, was where compared to the US, it's kind of the opposite. It's just like how great, like, we conquered this land. Like we're not gonna highlight like what we did to get there. You know what I mean? So, and like the only, and there's a class that I took last year, which was great, that like touched on Asian Americans, African Americans, Native Americans, was a social justice class. And it really, it's not a hit, like it's kind of like it should be a history class, but it was something that was really informative for the class, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely right. Just more education would be so important and so just helpful. And I just like, again, thinking about my class, it's like, okay, Columbus came, then it was Thanksgiving, and everything was fine after that. And that's just
exactly.
not it. But yeah,
No.
I mean, thank you so much for being on today. That's really all I have for you for today, but I do appreciate it. And I think these conversations are important, and just your own experiences. I really appreciate you being able to share that with us.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Of course. Throughout the month of November, the NEC will be providing resources to our fans to access accurate education on Indigenous history. Please follow our Instagram and Twitter accounts at NEC Sports to learn more. That was Merrimack's Zach Vinnell, and this has been NEC Now.